My mother laid down a brutal ultimatum anyone wishing to marry me must cough up a $50 dowry. My sister went around telling everyone she knew, well, sure, my brother is a bit bloated, swarthy, and vertically challenged, why? But he's still top-tier husband material. At her words, her friends instantly spiraled and fled as if avoiding a plague. Until one fateful day, a strikingly handsome man appeared alongside Su Wanro at the banquet hall, and in that moment her friends completely lost their minds. This is the guy you described as bloated, swarthy walks and vertically challenged Wao. It turns out Su Wanro is a notoriously overprotective brother con. Terrified that her besties would try to steal me away, she constantly smeared me as short, hideous, and stingy. As a result, since the day I reached adulthood, I haven't had a single romantic prospect. My foster parents were worried sick, asking Sulk, exactly what kind of woman are you looking for? Whoa. Anyone hoping to wed my precious baby brother, he must first prove they can love him more than I do. Back then, I was too busy burying my face in her embrace, so she never witnessed my cheeks flushing a deep crimson. She had no clue that she was the true ruler of my heart. My feelings for her were taboo in the eyes of society, so I kept my affection buried deep underground, until the night the truth finally unraveled. The woman who had pampered me to the bone struck me across the face for the very first time. Oh, you have absolutely no sense of shame, Soto. The next day she announced her engagement to my best friend. Don't you dare miss the wedding between Jinian and me, Gil. After hearing that, I felt like I had cried every tear in my body. It was precisely in that hollow moment that a kinship agency called my phone, claiming they had finally tracked down my biological parents. Right then, I made the firm resolution to leave her behind. I dialed my birth parents across the vast ocean and whispered, Mom, Dad, I'm ready. I'll move abroad to live with you. Upon hearing my voice and those words, my parents erupted into hysterical sobs of joy. Thank God, Xiao Yu. If not for that catastrophic earthquake back then, our family wouldn't have been torn apart for all these years. Mom and Dad are coming to bring you home right now, Biarg. A strange, bittersweet ache surged through my chest. I took a sharp, jagged breath, trying to suppress the tidal wave of emotions. Just give me 2 more weeks to wrap things up. There are still a few things I need to settle on my end. Once everything's resolved, I'll head over. Right. We were just being impatient. After all, the Su family raised you for all these years, and we heard your sister has pampered you since you were tiny. You definitely need to say your proper goodbyes. Hearing them mention Su Wanro sent a violent jolt through my heart. When I was only 6 years old, a massive earthquake separated me from my biological parents, leading the authorities to place me with the Su family. The Sus were a prestigious old money dynasty. The parents were always drowned in corporate business, and although they technically adopted me, they rarely showed me any genuine affection. To say I was raised by the Su family would be a lie. I was raised by Su Wanru alone. At 7, when I was terrified of the thunder, she held me close and sang lullabies until I drifted off. At 10, when I looked longingly at my classmates' snacks and fancy toys, she literally bought out the entire convenience store, spoiling me into a little prince everyone envied. At 14, when I collapsed at home with a blistering fever, she was the one racing around to bring me hot water, personally feeding me my medicine drop by drop, whatever my heart desired. She would always present it to me in an instant. People around here always mocked her brother complex, but no one knew that during those nights we relied on each other. I had long since fallen deeply for Su Wanru, but I never dared to confess my feelings, only venturing to write them in my diary, secretly documenting every ounce of my love for her, or venting to my best friend Song Jinian. But I never in a million years imagined that Song Jinian would betray me and tell her everything. That night, Su Wanro burst into my room unexpectedly, her face dark as she hunted down that diary and tore it into absolute shreds. She hurled the paper scraps at me like daggers. Before I could even find my voice to explain, she slammed the door and vanished. From then on, she went out of her way to avoid me, and on the rare occasions our paths crossed, her gaze was nothing but freezing cold, as if she were staring at a total stranger. I tried to go and demand some clarity, only to stumble upon Su Wanro pinning Song Jinian in a corner, locked in a passionate, breathless kiss. I suppose some endings are simply carved in stone by fate. It was destined that Su Wanro and I would never be. It was destined that my years in the Su household were nothing more than a fleeting, beautiful dream. Now it's time for me to return to my own path, and so I made my final choice. I decided to return to the home where I truly belong, and to bury my long-standing feelings for Su Wanru forever. That morning, I headed downstairs earlier than usual, watching my foster parents warmly invite me for breakfast. I offered them a faint, dutiful smile as I took my usual seat beside them. Then I revealed that I had found my biological parents and shared my decision to move abroad to reunite with them. I laid it all out for my foster parents. This is wonderful news. Xiao Yu, I'm so incredibly happy you found your real family. Have you shared this with your sister yet? I froze. Did I really need to tell Su Wanru? Since her heart was now entirely consumed by Song Jinian, Would my leaving even make a difference to her? What is it you need to tell me? I spun around abruptly, only to see her standing right there in the doorway. It's nothing. Sister, you're home. Hearing that title for the first time in ages. Suwanru's footsteps faltered instantly. She couldn't help but lock eyes with me intensely. When exactly did it start? That moment I stopped calling her sister. Was it at 1815 or perhaps even earlier? Now that I was using that distant honorific again. Suwanru's gaze darkened with hidden depth. She stared at me fixedly for a long moment, sensing that something about me had fundamentally shifted. Finally, she lowered her lashes and broke the eye contact. She stepped forward and placed the elegantly wrapped gifts on the table. Her voice detached as she spoke. Mom, Dad, these are the gifts Jinian picked out for you. He said they're just small tokens of his affection, and he hopes you'll appreciate them. We love them, we love them. Jinian always has such impeccable taste in gifts. Did you remember to thank him for us? Wanru, next time you visit Jinian's family, be sure to bring that premium black tea from the cabinet. If he's free this weekend, invite him and his parents over for a visit. It was crystal clear they were planning the wedding. Yeah. I sat there in silence watching them play happy family as a crushing wave of isolation washed over me. My fingernails dug sharply into my palms before I quickly forced myself to let go. In that moment, the reality hit me harder than ever. I was nothing but an outsider here. But honestly, I won't have to suffer through this much longer. With that final thought, I rose calmly and retreated toward my room. Hearing the movement, Su Wanro looked up from her chat with our parents, only to catch my silhouette vanishing behind the door. Was it just my imagination? From the moment she arrived until now, I had only uttered a single hollow sentence. That was a far cry from my usual clingy self. That afternoon, I took my household register to handle the residency transfer. As I descended the stairs, I spotted Song Jinian lounging beside Su Wanro's, wearing a smitten grin as he watched her peel an orange. With her slender, elegant fingers, she expertly stripped away the rind and, meticulously picking off every stray white fiber. She broke off a segment and pressed it to Song Jinian's lips. A blush crept up Song Jinian's cheeks as he stole a glance at her, obediently taking the fruit from her hand with his lips. Su Wanru let out a soft melodic chuckle, pulling a tissue from the box nearby to delicately dab the juice from the corner of his mouth. Is it sweet? Song Jinian nodded eagerly, picking up a segment himself to offer back to Su Wanro. You should try it too, yucks. Witnessing their sickeningly sweet display, I silently averted my eyes and headed straight for the exit. Xiao Yu, I turned back, seeing him wave me over. Wanru is off work today, and we agreed to go hang out at the park. Do you want to tag along with us? What? I wouldn't want to crash your date. We're practically family cult. What's there to crash? I have my own business to attend to. Maybe next time. Hearing my second rejection in a row, the radiant smile on Song Jinian's face instantly stiffened. Xiao Yu, are you still resenting me for stealing your sister away, Kiao? Is that why you're refusing to hang out with us, Walk? The one I've truly loved all along was always you, Heel. So how could anyone call it stealing at all? This bold declaration made Song Jinian's ears flush bright red. Su Wanru let out a soft, airy chuckle, throwing herself into his arms. If he won't go, then let him stay. He can suit himself. Indeed, I should suit myself, and then we can both walk our separate paths for good. I offered the two of them a polite, distant farewell before turning around and heading straight for the exit. Once I finished processing the residency transfer, I left the station and headed straight to the racing club. Inside the office, an entire wall was plastered with the trophies and honors we had seized, alongside countless snapshots of past adrenaline-fueled races. As I gazed at them, my eyes filled with deep nostalgia and regret. I never expected this goodbye to arrive so abruptly. Etzo, my mentor, walked in from the garage and gave my shoulder a firm, supportive squeeze. Looking at the man who had trained me for 10 years, the sorrow I had just suppressed began to choke me once more. I dug my nails into my palm and took a long, steadying breath. Master, I'm moving abroad. My biological parents finally tracked me down, and I've decided to settle down with them overseas. Well, that's incredible news, what? But will you keep racing after you move away, Ki? Racing has always been my ultimate dream. I'm not the type to just throw it all away. Yuck. I fully intend to keep chasing the finish line out there. So are you leaving right this second, Wei Yum? The biggest national tournament is about to kick off. You have a massive shot at taking the championship this time. Thought. I've already discussed it with my parents. I'll settle my affairs here before I join them. I still have half a month left, which is exactly enough time to finish this final race. Only then did my mentor finally look relieved, patting my shoulder once more in encouragement. We chatted for a while longer, and it wasn't until late that I grabbed my bag to head home. However, as I pushed open the door, I saw Song Jinian was still there. Listening closely to their conversation, I realized the three of them were finalizing the wedding details. All those suits and various wedding gown designs were so numerous they left me dizzy. I was hoping Xiao Yu could help me decide. After all, we've been best buds for ages, and he knows my taste better than anyone. He dropped that line just as I crossed the threshold. Xiao Yu, your brother-in-law is really stressing over this. Why don't you spend the next few days accompanying him to pick out the wedding essentials? I locked eyes with Song Jinian. A warm smile danced at the corners of his eyes. But the very second our gazes met, that warmth curdled into pure provocation. I looked down, contemplating for a moment, before delivering my rejection. Sorry, I'm busy. The racing club is swamped right now. I only had 2 weeks left on the clock, before I vanished for good. I had a mountain of loose ends to tie up. I simply didn't have the bandwidth to play stylist for him. But as soon as the words left my mouth, the atmosphere in the room turned ice cold. Your best friend is literally getting married. Can't your little hobbies wait for once? It's settled then. Tomorrow, I'm going to the club to request leave for you, if she used her authority as my elder, to force a leave of absence upon me. What power did I have to say no? A bitter, hollow smile tugged at my lips. I didn't utter another word. Over the following days, I was forced to drop everything of actual importance, to devote myself entirely to Song Jinian, picking out every trivial detail for his wedding. I naively assumed we'd just do a quick run through the department store. Instead, he dragged me from the south end of the city to the north, from the grandeur of the wedding gown, down to the specific curve of a wine glass. He demanded my input. Every single time. When I suggested he just send someone to consult Su Wanru, he feigned annoyance. Why would I bother your sister? That woman is such a workaholic. Outside of throwing money at me, she's completely clueless. Only you truly understand my heart. Last time I asked her to help pick out the rings, she didn't even show up. She just had an entire display case delivered to my house, and told me to take my pick. He continued to vent to me, yet his eyes were brimming with undeniable smugness. I listened in silence, offering none of the emotional reaction he craved. Just as Song Jinian opened his mouth to speak, he caught a glimpse of her at the entrance. Wanru. What are you doing here? I looked up and watched him sprint toward her, throwing himself into Su Wanru's embrace. Didn't you say you were heading to the mountain temple to pray? I took half a day off just to pick you up. Xiao Yu has been accompanying me all these days. Why don't we all go together? Su Wanru didn't spare me so much as a glance. She simply grabbed the shopping bags and walked out. As the distant rhythmic tolling of the temple bells echoed, the dense fog began to dissipate, revealing the breathtaking mountain scenery to the onlookers. I kept my head down, focusing intently on the stone slabs beneath my feet, trudging forward one step at a time. What is this? A sudden voice snapped my train of thought. I looked up to see Song Jinian standing before an ancient Bodhi tree, carefully examining the prayer tags dangling from the branches. May Xiao Yu find eternal joy every passing year, and may every season bring him fulfillment. May Xiao Yu be blessed with health and protected from calamity, and may everyone he encounters be kind-hearted. May my boy Xiao Yu be safe and sound, through every dawn and dusk forevermore. Your humble believer, Su Wanru. As I stared at those fluttering prayer tags, my heart began to tremble violently, and my mind drifted back into the past. Ever since that catastrophic earthquake, my constitution had always been fragile. I was plagued by minor illnesses every 3 days, and major collapses every 5. In a desperate bid for my recovery, Su Wanru would trek to this temple every single week to hang a prayer tag for me, pleading with the heavens for my safety. I never imagined that after all these years, she had accumulated so many of them, or that these wishes would still be clinging to this tree. Yet despite these prayers, Su Wanru and I can never go back. The bond between you two siblings is truly touching. It makes me feel like the third wheel here. Song Jinian couldn't bear to read another word. He soured his expression and turned to storm off. Don't be ridiculous about being extra. You are my husband, and he is merely my younger brother. If seeing these makes you unhappy, I'll have someone strip them all down right now. With those words, Su Wanru turned her head and ordered her subordinates to rip every prayer tag clean off the ancient tree. One after another, the sacred tags fell like autumn leaves onto the dirt. They were trampled underfoot, stained with mud, and quickly replaced by a fresh batch of ribbons. These new ones were covered in Su Wanru's writing, filled with sugary vows meant only for Song Jinian. Only then did Song Jinian's smug smile return. He shot me a triumphant, taunting look. If you do this, won't Xiao Yu be furious with you? A brother can never compare to a husband's importance. Having successfully coddled Song Jinian into a good mood, she let him cling to her all the way back to the city. He remained glued to Su Wanru's side, while I sat in the back row, closing my eyes to seek a moment of rest. Suddenly, the vehicle's speed surged violently. My eyes snapped open. But before I could ask what was happening, a deafening thunderous roar exploded in my ears. The car completely broke down, smashing through the guardrail and tumbling down the slope, finally wedging itself deep within a dark ravine. My head slammed brutally against the seat back, sending waves of darkness flickering across my vision. By the time I regained a sliver of consciousness, I realized I was pinned and completely trapped within the mangled seat. A thick branch had impaled my arm through the wreckage, and beside me lay the unconscious Song Jinian. He seemed relatively unscathed, likely having just fainted from the sheer terror. Su Wanru in the driver's seat reacted with lightning speed, shattering the window and crawling out of the wreck first. She stumbled several times before finding her footing. She glanced at me as I gasped in suffocating pain, then looked at the passed out Song Jinian. With only a split second of hesitation, she hoisted Jinian onto her back. I'm taking Jinian to safety first. I'll send someone back to retrieve you later. Without a second glance at my expression, she left. She hoisted Song Jinian onto her back and hurried away, as if terrified he'd suffer even a single scratch. The moment I decided to give up on her fall, I vowed I would never shed another tear for her sake. From now on, I will only live for myself. But as I lay pinned under the wreckage in that ravine, the memories of the earthquake flooded back against my will. Back then, I was also buried deep beneath the rubble, trapped in a pitch-black void with nothing but my own fear. I was crushed under that weight for 3 days and nights. Even after the Su family took me in, I relived those horrific days in my dreams every night, sobbing until I shook uncontrollably under the covers. In those moments, Su Wanru would always rush into my room and pull me into a crushing embrace, whispering, "Don't be afraid. My sweet boy big sister is right here. I promise I'll never let anything hurt you ever again." But now I could only watch her silhouette grow smaller, until she completely vanished from my line of sight. The sky grew darker by the second, yet there was still no sign of Su Wanru returning for me. I let out a bitter hollow laugh, forcing myself to summon the last dregs of my strength. Ignoring the agonizing pain, I crawled painstakingly out from the mangled car, gritting my teeth against the scream in my throat. I violently yanked the impaling branch out of my arm, then began dragging myself toward the road inch by agonizing inch. I lost all track of time as I crawled, until I finally reached the main asphalt road, and surrendered to the encroaching darkness. When I finally regained consciousness, I found myself staring at the ceiling of a hospital ward. My arm was encased in a thick, heavy layer of gauze. My last hazy memory was being rescued by a kind-hearted passerby. Since the moment I was admitted until now, Su Wanru hasn't shown her face a single time. The nurses mentioned she's busy tending to Song Jinian, even though he only sustained minor scratches. She rented out an entire floor of the hospital, just so he could recuperate in absolute peace. Hearing that news, I instinctively glanced down at my own heavily bandaged and mangled arm. I remembered when I was hospitalized for a mere cold, audace. Su Wanru treated it like a life-or-death crisis, refusing to leave my bedside for even a second. On the day I was finally discharged, a crowd of friends had gathered to welcome me back. Among them was a girl who had once pursued me. Looking at the vibrant bouquet she thrust toward me, my first instinct was to politely decline, but she stammered, cutting me off, "Xiaoyu, please don't overthink this. These flowers are just to celebrate your recovery. I know you're planning to leave us very soon, and I just want you to be happy wherever you go." I froze for a heartbeat before offering my thanks. However, the moment I turned around, I saw Su Wanru standing like a statue at the door. In my memory, she rarely lost her cool, but now her face was dark with undisguised fury. Her gaze was ice cold as she glared at the flowers in my hand, before she abruptly turned and stormed away. I stood there blinking in utter confusion, unable to fathom why she was so enraged. Still, I didn't let it weigh on my mind. Once home, I simply placed the bouquet in a vase. Suddenly, a sharp knock echoed from my door. Supporting myself against the wall, I limped over to answer. The door creaked open, and Su Wanru's face appeared before me. Ever since she discovered my forbidden feelings, our relationship had plummeted to sub-zero temperatures. She hadn't knocked on my door in an eternity. What on earth was she doing here now? Before I could speak, she lunged forward and pulled me into a hug. That sudden, desperate move forced me back several steps. The next morning, I stepped out of the guest room, only to find Su Wanru marching toward me with a scowl. "Why the hell was I in your room?" Realizing she had zero memory of last night's events, I opened my mouth to explain, but she cut me off with a voice like a frozen blade. "Did you drug me and drag me in there? Xiaoyu, I told you there is zero chance for us. Besides, I'm literally about to get married. Are you still this obsessed with me?" I flinched at her words, then lowered my gaze and stayed silent. What was the point of defending myself? To her, my love for her was my ultimate sin. In her eyes, the current mate couldn't do a single thing right. Seeing my eyes redden as I stood there in silence, Su Wanru's breathing hitched for a moment. Just as she started to step toward me, a gentle male voice drifted in from outside. "Wanru, wait," and then he stepped into the room. Just as I was about to wrap my arms around him with a smile, my expression suddenly stiffened. "Wait, why is the corner of your lip busted?" "Toss. It's nothing. Probably just a mosquito bite." She instinctively brushed her fingers against her lips, before casting a deep, lingering gaze in my direction. During the days that followed, I didn't have a single private moment with Su Wanru. She was completely preoccupied with Song Jinian while I was desperately cramming in my training sessions. One afternoon, just as I was gearing up to hop into my car for practice, my mentor arrived with Su Wanru and Song Jinian in tow. Listen up, everyone, let me introduce you. Ma, this is Ms. Su Nick and our new specially recommended driver, Song Jinian. Let's give them a warm welcome. Amidst the polite applause, my mentor singled me out from the edge of the crowd. Xiao Yu, make sure you take Jinian under your wing. Once the introductions were over, my mentor respectfully led Su Wanru and Song Jinian away to finalize the paperwork. The moment the office door clicked shut, the garage erupted into a swarm of whispers. I heard Jinian tried to join us before Kate, but his skills were trash, so he got rejected. Damn, Miss Su really has that much pull, huh? Just one word from her bowl, and he waltzes in here like he owns the place. Remember how many races we had to win just to get a seat, Vasai? Can't compete with that. No way. The waves of jealousy and resentment kept coming. My gaze flickered with a brief moment of daze. There is absolutely no one alive who understands Su Wanru better than I do. She was always cold, principled, and unyielding. The kind of person who worshipped the rulebook. Despite her immense power, she never abused her status. Until now, breaking every rule for Song Jinian's sake. It seems her love for him is truly profound. And so Song Jinian officially joined the club effectively making me his senior mentor, honoring my master's instructions. I attempted to teach him with absolute sincerity. But Song Jinian was a defiant, unteachable brat. Not only was he half-hearted during every session, but he also cooked up endless excuses to skip training. This time he vanished before I could even stop him. I could only walk over to the window to call out for him. Instead, my eyes landed immediately on Su Wanru. I didn't linger on the site for a second longer, calmly shutting the window to resume my training. I didn't make it back home until late that night, only to find Su Wanru looming by the front gate. Her expression was shadowed and unreadable, looking very much like she had been lying in wait for me. Just as I approached to ask what she wanted, she hit me with a cold, sharp interrogation. Xiao Yu, Sol, can you stop constantly targeting Jinian? If you have a problem with him, just say it to my face. I was already drowning in exhaustion, but the moment those words left her lips, a tidal wave of complex emotions crashed over me. Grievance, sorrow, and the utter helplessness. I didn't even have to guess. I knew Song Jinian had been adding fuel to the fire, with whatever lies he whispered in her ear. I didn't bother explaining myself. I simply brushed past her and retreated to my room. From that point on, I gave Song Jinian total freedom, which only served to make him more insufferably smug. He'd show up at the club just to clock in, before immediately turning on his heel and leaving, when the others, fuming with rage, tried to confront him, so I reached out and held them back. I merely shook my head. This is Song Jinian's own life. If he fails the assessment, he'll be forced out anyway. He's responsible for his own future, not us. Besides, I don't have the time to waste on him anymore. I thought that was the end of the matter. But I never expected Su Wanru to suddenly track me down and demand I hand my tournament slot over to Song Jinian. At first the request didn't even register, until she asked me again if I was willing. Only then did I lift my head to look at her my eyes burning with a cold, sharp fury. You're telling me to give my spot to him to duh. I fought with everything I had to suppress my emotions. Yet I couldn't hide the unmistakable tremor in my voice. He is your future brother-in-law after all. Besides, it's just a single tournament entry. Is it really that important to you? Su Wanru, you of all people know exactly what racing means to me. Su Wanru's heart suddenly felt as if it were being crushed by an iron fist. She seemed to suddenly remember those years, vivid memories of me pushing my limits for racing, throwing my entire soul into every grueling practice session. Her fist clenched tightly in an instant, yet she couldn't find another word to say. She simply turned and retreated in stony silence. Ever since Song Jinian was parachuted into the club on Su Wanru's whim, the team had gradually fractured into two warring factions. One side looked to me as their leader, grinding daily to chase our professional dreams. The other side gravitated towards Song Jinian, completely abandoning their training schedules. They were obsessed with sucking up to him, hoping he'd whisper sweet nothings to Su Wanru on their behalf to secure some unearned perks and climb the corporate ladder. These two groups had avoided a direct clash until today's post-training session. Xiao Yu, there's something I'm struggling to grasp. Could you show me the ropes? Whilst I instinctively knit my brows in annoyance. But before I could even utter a response, one of Song Jinian's mindless lackeys shoved me violently. What's with that look, huh? Our Jinian is being nice enough to ask for advice, so lose the trashy attitude, Sa. What do you think you're doing? Why? I'd like to ask what Song Jinian's game is. He had all day to ask questions during practice, yet he waited until the very end to pull this stunt. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you, Sa? I had no desire to escalate the conflict, so I tried to restrain my fuming friends. However, the opposing side mistook our restraint for cowardice, and their insults became even more venomous. Scared now, let me tell you something. Our Jinian is the destined future ace of this club. Xiao Yu being able to teach him is the highest honor you'll ever have. You're nothing but a pathetic orphan. If you get on Jinian's bad side, watch how fast he kicks you out on the street. As the tension reached its breaking point, I don't know who threw the first punch, but both groups instantly collided in a chaotic brawl. In the middle of the carnage, Song Jinian lunged at my side and gave me a vicious, calculated shove. I was standing right on the precipice of the high platform, and just as I was about to plummet over the edge, I instinctively grabbed hold of Song Jinian, dragging him right down into the abyss with me. Both of us plummeted from the towering height together. As high-pitched screams erupted from every direction, the entire scene descended into absolute carnage. By the time Su Wanru arrived on the scene, we were both being frantically rushed toward the operating theater. Staring at our mangled, broken bodies, Su Wanru's face drained of all color, and her usually unshakable voice trembled with panic. "What is the situation?" Miss Su fell. Both Mr. Jiang and Mr. Song fell from the high platform, resulting in compound fractures in both their legs. Furthermore, Mr. Jiang took the full impact of Mr. Song's weight, making his condition far more critical. We currently have only one dose of the specialized regenerative medicine though Mr. Song could potentially recover without it. Should we, before the doctor could finish his sentence? Su Wanru cut him off with icy precision, her voice dripping with absolute resolve. Hearing that ruthless, uncompromising tone, I, having just been jolted awake by the agony, felt like I'd been struck by lightning. She knows better than anyone that a racer's legs are his entire life, his very soul. The doctor explicitly stated that Song Jinian's injuries would heal perfectly fine even without the medicine. Suppressing the white-hot agony searing through my body, though, I gathered every last shred of my strength and pleaded through my tears. "Sister, don't. I'm begging you, give the medicine to me, please. It's fine if you hate me, I don't care, but it's fine that you abandoned me on that mountain for a day and night. But you know exactly what my legs mean to me. I can't lose them. I just can't. I still have dreams I need to chase, y'all. Please." By the end, I broke down into hysterical, soul-crushing sobs. Giant crystalline tears raced down my deathly pale cheeks and splattered onto the gurney, seeing the boy who once bore the most horrific scars, without ever shedding a single tear, now weeping with such utter devastation. Su Wanru's hands hanging at her sides clenched into tight white fists. Just as she was about to speak, the unconscious Song Jinian beside me was suddenly jolted back to reality. Recalling the bone-snapping pain of the fall, he erupted into a terrified wailing sob. "Wanru, my legs. The pain is unbearable, Kiyesh. You have to save me." Hearing his wails, Su Wanru violently shook off my hand and rushed over to grasp Song Jinian's. "Shh, it's okay, Wakyu. I'm ordering the doctor to give you the miracle medicine right now. Heal." With that, she cast aside all hesitation, barking orders at the medical staff to inject Song Jinian immediately. Watching this scene unfold from the sidelines, I desperately forced my mangled body to lunge toward him, delusionally hoping to snatch the syringe from the doctor's hand. But my shattered legs acted like lead weights, pinning me down and rendering me completely immobile. The cold needle pierced deep into Song Jinian's legs, and I watched in hopeless silence as that life-saving fluid slowly drained into his body drop by agonizing drop. 3 days later, I finally clawed my way back to consciousness. This time, I saw Su Wanru sitting right by my bedside. Her face was a mask of sheer exhaustion, with dark circles and bloodshot eyes mirroring her fatigue. Seeing me stir and open my eyes, her hand trembled slightly as she reached out to support me, only for me to recoil and dodge her touch. Su Wanru's hand froze mid-air, stiff and awkward. It took a long, heavy moment before she finally pulled back. With a dry, raspy throat, she managed to whisper, "You'll still be able to walk normally, Ma. It's just, your racing career is officially over. Besides, I'll take care of you forever, and Jinian, he is my fiancé. I couldn't just abandon him in his time of need. By all accounts, I should have been a storm of emotions, furious, hopeless, devastated, and in absolute agony. I should have been screaming at the top of my lungs. But as every emotion collided and piled up in my heart, all that remained was a hollow, crushing sense of powerlessness. Please, just get out." A suffocating silence descended upon the hospital room. Eventually, Su Wanru finally stood up, leaving me with a faint, "Get some rest," before quietly vanishing. The moment the door clicked shut, I finally looked down at my ruined legs and let out a primal, uninhibited sob. My racing dreams had been ruthlessly ground into dust. Since the doctor delivered the death sentence to my career soul, I had gradually transformed into a hollow shell of a man. I no longer cried, nor did I ever smile. I just sat in my chair, staring blankly at the world outside. Until the day the grand tournament finally kicked off. Ignoring the Su family's desperate attempts to stop me, I went to the track. and took a seat in the very last row. I stared down at the asphalt track, watching as Song Jinian used my hard-earned slot to step onto the competitive stage, soaking you in the applause and flowers that were meant for me. Once the race concluded, Su Wanru approached him with a massive bouquet, as a swarm of others crowded around to offer their congratulations. Only I remained sitting motionless in my seat, observing the bustling crowd as they gathered, and eventually dispersed into the distance. I have no idea how much time slipped away before I finally stood up and walked toward them, as she saw me approaching. Su Wanru instinctively stepped in front of Song Jinian. If you're angry, take it out on me. Just don't you dare lay a finger on him. I'm not angry. I'm just here to deliver a gift to you both. Those words sent a visible shockwave through everyone present. Follow me. Leaving them with that short command, I walked out of the arena. The very second they stepped outside, a streak of fire shot directly into the heavens and exploded into a brilliant bloom. Petals of light cascaded down like a shimmering rain, as one firework after another ignited the dark sky. A flicker of bewildered realization crossed Su Wanru's eyes. In the next heartbeat, I spoke directly to her. Su Wanru, do you remember the day I won my very first race? You set off a sea of fireworks across the sky just for me. You said you wished for my life to be radiant, and for me to live as free as the wind. Today, I'm returning that display of fireworks to you. I wish you and my brother-in-law a long life together. May you stay in love until your hair turns white. The moment I uttered the words brother-in-law, Su Wanru's pupils contracted violently. She instinctively snapped her gaze toward me. This was the first time I had publicly acknowledged him as family. Her chest suddenly tightened with an unknown dread. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, I had already turned away. On the eve of the wedding, the Su household was a whirlwind of chaotic activity. Late into the night, the downstairs remained brightly lit, as Mother Su directed the maids to arrange the wedding supplies and decorate the bridal suite. Upstairs, a single lamp glowed within my room. I sat quietly on the carpet, meticulously gathering every gift Su Wanru had ever given me, and packing them away into a large crate. One by one, I packed away every single memory, then gathered the heavy overflowing crates in my arms. As I slowly descended the grand staircase, the dead of night had brought a heavy silence, yet the house was saturated with festive decorations, each shimmering ornament serving as a silent reminder that this home was about to welcome a brand new master. I refused to linger on the celebratory scenery, hauling my boxes toward the exit instead, only to collide directly with Su Wanru as she returned from the Song family estate. And where exactly are you going with those? Just purging some unnecessary clutter. Staring at my cold, indifferent silhouette, she felt an inexplicable pang of dread tighten in her chest. Ever since that tragic incident, it was as if I had become a complete stranger. With my racing career effectively dead, she expected me to scream, to cry, or to throw a fit, but I remained unnervingly composed, a level of calm that was frankly terrifying. I turned back to meet her gaze, and a moment later she spoke up. Jinian said, he wants you to be his best man at the wedding. He's my brother-in-law now, not my brother. A role like that isn't appropriate for a junior like me. You should find someone else more suitable. With that final word, I looked away from her and walked toward the door without glancing back. It wasn't that I was unsuitable. It was that I'd be long gone by the time they said I do. On the night before the ceremony, I carried a small box and sought out my foster parents. Father, mother, I won't be able to attend sister's wedding tomorrow. My biological parents have already booked my travel, and my flight is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, I'm leaving for good. Why so suddenly? It's not sudden. I should have left a long time ago. Inside is every cent I've managed to save over the years. The amount covers everything you spent on me. During these past 15 years in the Su household, I offered them a faint smile and shook my head, pulling a thick, heavy envelope from my pocket to press into their hands. My foster parents shook their heads frantically, trying to shove the money back into my grasp. But I firmly pushed it back, refusing to yield. Please, you absolutely must accept this. I then sank to my knees on the cold floor, performing a solemn obeisance, and heavy kowtow striking my head 3 times before them. Mom, Dad, thank you for the warmth and care you gave me these past 15 years. The debt of your kindness in raising me is something I will carry in my soul forever. Since I can no longer remain by your side, Ma, I pray for your enduring health and a life filled with boundless longevity. I finally lifted my head. Gee. My eyes brimming with unshed tears, and a faint smear of blood staining my forehead. On the day of the grand wedding, Su Wanru should have been heading to the venue, she said. Yet she remained motionless, paralyzed by hesitation. Instead, she kept pacing anxiously outside my bedroom door, staring at that tightly bolted door in front of her. Su Wanru's heart suddenly flared with a searing heat. A gnawing intuition told her she couldn't leave, that if she walked away now, she would lose something precious beyond measure. Sister, is something wrong, Huo? I pushed the door open and stepped out, only to find Su Wanru lingering right at the entrance. The sheer distance and icy detachment in my eyes made her heart skip a violent, panicked white beat. But why don't you just come with me right now, Wall? I froze. What exactly would I be going there to do today? To witness a front row display of her and Song Jinian's romance. I instinctively glanced down at the watch on my wrist. I don't have the time. I still have some matters to settle. Yo. I'll head straight to the wedding venue to meet you later. Su Wanrao opened her mouth to argue further, but Mother Su's voice drifted up from downstairs, rushing her. Wanru, we're going to be late for the ceremony. Diao. Between my blunt rejection and the relentless pressure from our parents, Su Wanru still found herself unable to walk away. Only when the shouting from below grew deafening did she finally suppress the inexplicable terror in her chest. Find me before the wedding ceremony officially begins. I have something vital to tell you. I didn't make a sound, simply lowering my gaze with an indifferent expression. Yet Su Wanru seemed obsessed with getting a verbal answer, repeating herself with desperate urgency. You must come and find me. Do you hear me? What? Seeing that she refused to budge until she got her way, Saint-Denis, I was forced to lie, nodding slowly. Fine. I understand. These 3 simple words finally served as the reassurance Su Wanru desperately needed. She finally released her grip on the doorframe and turned to depart. I watched from above as she climbed into the lead bridal car, followed by the rest of the convoy filling the street. Finally, the celebratory cannons roared, and the wedding procession began to drift away. The cars shrank slowly within my line of sight, until they eventually vanished into the horizon. Happy wedding, Su Wanru, and goodbye forever. Having said my final piece, I gripped my pre-packed suitcase and headed downstairs. Stepping out the door, I marched toward the airport with a silhouette of pure resolve, never once looking back. The Songsu Union was the biggest headline in the capital. Countless spectators had gathered early, lining both sides of the road where the convoy would pass. They waited for the Su family to toss traditional wedding favors, shouting endless streams of blessings and congratulations. Yet inside the bridal car, Su Wanru was inexplicably miserable. She recalled those violent, frantic heart palpitations she felt outside my door this morning, though, and her chest began to tighten with panic once more. She felt an overwhelming sense that something had gone terribly wrong, too. Because the Su family's status eclipsed the Songs, Su Wanru had personally led the procession to collect the groom. The Sus didn't care for ancient restrictive traditions. They simply wanted the public to know that Su Wanru marrying Song Jinian was a blessing for the Songs. Their daughter was marrying down out of love, not climbing some social ladder through a cold business arrangement. The Song estate was equally decked out in festive lights in neck, draped in auspicious red silks and banners. Song Jinian's groomsmen stood out on the balcony, scouring the horizon for the first sign of the Su convoy. Finally, as the 11 o'clock bells began to chime, the Grand Su family motorcade slowly came into view. The men rushed excitedly to Song Jinian's side. They're here. They're finally here, Walks. Ms. Su has arrived in Wals. Amidst the loud fanfare of flutes and drums, Su Wanru finally ascended to the second floor, bouquet in hand, stepping into Song Jinian's private quarters. Gazing at the stunning Su Wanru in her bridal gown, Song Jinian's heart hammered with unbridled excitement, and he was finally officially winning the prize. After the usual wedding games and banner, Su Wanru finally shared the bridal car with Song Jinian, heading toward the grand hotel banquet. Throughout the drive, Song Jinian kept scrutinizing her. He couldn't tell if it was just his imagination, but from the moment the procession started until now, Su Wanru seemed completely checked out. He reached out and tugged at her gown. Wanru, is something wrong? Is something on your mind? Well, you don't seem very happy today. I was just thinking about the wedding all night, so I was too anxious to catch even a wink of sleep. Only then did Song Jinian drop his suspicions, tenderly wrapping his arm around her shoulders. The convoy eventually pulled up at the hotel entrance. The couple retreated to the lounge to rest and chatted for quite a long while. Finally, Su Wanru stood up and stepped out. Recalling the conversation we had this morning, she hurriedly summoned the head butler, ordering him to bring me to her before I arrived. Her heart was suddenly clouded with a strange confusion. She wanted to have a serious talk with me, to tell me that Song Jinian was officially my brother-in-law now, that regardless of what secret feelings I harbored, I must never let them show in front of him again. She wanted to say that after Jinian moved in, I could still live at the Su estate as always, without ever having to move out. In her heart of hearts, I was still her precious younger brother. She rehearsed 1,000 different sentences, anticipating exactly how to break the ice with me. But when she saw the butler return alone, all her prepared words instantly dissolved into sheer panic. Where is Xiao Yu? The butler opened his mouth, struggling to find the right words to say. When Su Wanru had dispatched him to find me, he had run into my foster parents on the stairs. Upon hearing why he was looking for me, they exchanged a knowing, heavy look. Calculating the time in their heads, they realized I should be boarding my flight by now. With the wedding ceremony about to commence, if Su Wanru went looking for me at this hour, she would inevitably discover the devastating truth. It would undoubtedly bring the entire wedding to a halt. Therefore, they commanded the butler to lie to Su Wanru, claiming my leg injury had suddenly flared up, forcing me to head home and rest, to ensure the deception was airtight. They even specifically brought over a note I had written long ago but had never actually shown her. It was unmistakably my handwriting, stating that I wasn't feeling well, and had decided to head home early. Su Wanru took the scrap of paper, her brow furrowing into a tight knot. A gnawing intuition told her something was off. Just as she was about to question it, the signal was given that the ceremony was starting. The bride had to be in position. Su Wanru's foot, which had been set to leave, slowly retreated back into place. She turned and marched toward the wedding altar. The butler watched her silhouette depart and exhaled a silent breath of relief. The elegant, haunting notes of the piano began to resonate, and Su Wanru locked eyes with Song Jinian at the end of the aisle, steadily making her way toward him. Song Jinian wore a smug, triumphant grin he couldn't suppress. But inexplicably, her mind suddenly drifted to a forbidden thought. What would I look like standing there in a groom's suit? Given my playful nature, I probably wouldn't wear a traditional tuxedo. Choosing instead a bold black and gold ensemble. I wouldn't just stand there waiting for her like Song Jinian, but would stride toward her with a light, confident step. My face wouldn't wear Jinian's shy, timid smile, but would be lit up by a radiant, unabashed beam, before I intimately pulled her close to my side. Perhaps she was too deeply immersed in this fantasy, because when the officiant asked the life-altering question, if she would take this man to be her husband, my name instinctively slipped from her lips. She was still clutching the microphone, yes, and the speakers blasted my name through every corner of the hall. The guests were struck with immediate bewilderment and followed by a surge of frantic whispering. Isn't Xiao Yu just the Su family's adopted brother? Wait, why did the eldest Miss Su just say his name? In the front row, the parents of both families saw their expressions stiffen in instant horror. My foster parents stared at her in shock, their anxiety reaching a fever pitch. How could their daughter screw up at such a critical moment? Song's parents looked even more grim, turning to demand an immediate explanation from the sus. On the stage, hearing Su Wanru cry out my name, Song Jinian's face turned deathly pale, his hands clutching his trousers until his knuckles whitened. With a trembling voice, he choked out, Wanru up. What are you saying? He instinctively reached out to snatch Su Wanru's hand. They were just one pivotal step away from officially becoming husband and wife. So why on earth did she just scream Xiao Yu's name? Had this been the past, Su Wanru would have snapped back to reality instantly and brushed this incident off with a clever excuse. But now she merely scanned the sea of guests below the stage. Whether faces were familiar or strange, none of them were the one person she was desperate to find. In the next heartbeat, ignoring the collective gasps and shouts, she bolted off the stage and sprinted toward the exit. A chorus of voices called out her name, some fueled by fury, others by sorrow, or sheer despair, yet she didn't look back once. She burst out of the wedding venue like a woman possessed. Song Jinian instinctively tried to give chase, but the world suddenly went black before his eyes, and he collapsed straight onto the floor. The entire ceremony dissolved into absolute pandemonium. Su Wanru scrambled into her car and floored the accelerator, racing headlong back toward the Su estate. The memory of my hollow gaze from this morning, that scrap of paper with its yellowed, worn edges, and the blatant guilt flickering in the butler's eyes, all merged into a dark, ominous premonition in her soul. The car screeched to a halt at the gates of the villa. She didn't even wait for it to stabilize before storming inside. She took the stairs to the second floor. In a series of frantic, desperate strides, she lunged toward my bedroom door and threw it open with a violent bang. The room was hauntingly vacant. Every single trace of my existence had vanished. Su Wanru's face froze in a mask of horror. She grabbed a passing maid by the shoulders. Where is my brother? The young master left with his suitcases early this morning. Don't. The maid stammered, terrified by her erratic behavior. The sickening dread in Su Wanru's heart intensified. She shoved the maid aside and charged toward the stairs, only to collide with her furious parents returning home. Stop right there, Mother Su barked. Su Wanru struggled wildly to break free, but in her blind, reckless panic, she lost her footing and tumbled down the staircase. Father Su watched the scene unfold, his eyes snapping shut in despair. He nearly blacked out on the spot. This was supposed to be a day of absolute celebration, yet it had spiraled into a humiliating, chaotic farce. The Su family rushed the unconscious Su Wanru to the ER, only to be blindsided by the doctor's announcement. She was already 1 month pregnant. The moment the Song family caught wind of this, they swarmed Su Wanru's bedside like vultures. They had initially assumed the marriage was dead in the water, but this unexpected twist changed everything. Su Wanru was carrying a Song heir, meaning she was effectively shackled to them forever. No one was more ecstatic than Song Jinian. He never imagined fate would be this generous to him, tossing him a trump card at such a desperate, pivotal moment. When Su Wanro finally regained consciousness, she found everyone hovering over her, as if she were some fragile high-priority asset. Wanru, you're pregnant now. Nah, you can't afford to take any risks. Now that you're awake, apologize to Jinian. Running out on your own wedding has turned him into the laughingstock of the city. But Su Wanru wasn't interested in apologies. Oh, she needed to find me? Oh, she had to know exactly where I had vanished to. She scrambled off the bed, desperate to hunt for me. But Father Su wasn't about to let her leave. With a sharp wave of his hand, he ordered the guards to restrain her. Yet she fought back with such ferocity they couldn't get a grip, leaving Father Su trembling with sheer rage. Daughter, what has gotten into you, Mak? You're carrying a child now. How can you act so recklessly? Where is Xiao Yu? Where did he go? Her eyes were bloodshot and brimming with tears, her voice cracking with a desperate plea. Recalling the maid's words from earlier, Su Wanru's heart hammered against her ribs. Why are you obsessing over that? Now, Titus, your only priority right now is to beg the Song family for forgiveness, wanted. Seeing that her father refused to give her an answer, she tried to bolt past him only for him to roar, "Seize her!" A swarm of guards lunged at once, pinning her down and forcing her to face Song Jinian. Do you even realize what day it is? Do you have any idea the shame you caused? By abandoning your own wedding halfway through. Where are the Su and Song families supposed to hide their faces now? Su Wanro, if you had no intention of marrying my son, you should have just said so. Why choose this exact moment to drag our family's reputation through the mud? How is my son supposed to hold his head up after this? Oh. Su Wanru clenched her hands into white-knuckled fists, pressing her lips together in a stony, unbreakable silence. Just then, the ward door was thrust open from the inside. A deathly pale Song Jinian emerged with his eyes tightly shut. Mother Song panicked, ignoring everything else, as she rushed to her son's side to check his condition. Why did you ditch your own wedding just to find Xiao Yu Wanda? Recalling her daughter's bizarre behavior throughout the day, an impossible, terrifying realization began to dawn on Mother Su. Su Wanru's fist tightened even further, her voice trapped in her throat as she struggled to find the words. Initially, she wanted to track me down just to tell me that I had to respect Song Jinian as my future brother-in-law. But the moment she realized I had vanished into thin air, her heart was instantly swallowed by a crushing wave of panic. She was desperate to find me. But then what would she even say? Suddenly, a montage of my memories flooded her mind. Moments of joy, soul-crushing breakdowns, and finally the look on my face this morning. That expression of total chilling peace. Slowly those fragmented images shifted shape, coalescing into the day her secret diary was exposed. The moment I summoned every ounce of courage to confess, "Sister Soy, I love you," a high-pitched ringing filled her ears, and she instinctively clutched at her chest, feeling her heart race. You went looking for Xiao Yu. An idiot. Did you suddenly realize that you're actually in love with him? Mother Su, having seen it all before, saw her daughter's shattered state and knew that the unthinkable truth was staring her right in the face. In the past, Su Wanru would have vehemently denied it without a second thought. But today, after seeing my empty seat at the altar and finding my room stripped bare at home, the desperation to find me was the only thing she could feel. That forbidden affection, which she had buried so deep in the trenches of her heart, had finally erupted and grown into an immovable obsession. He is your brother. How could you harbor such disgusting feelings for him? Yes, the very words she once used to push me away were now being hurled back at her by Mother Su 3 years later. A profound, suffocating sorrow surged from the depths of her soul. Today, the brutal truth finally hit her. She realized just how deeply those words could scar. It was a pure, unspoken affection, a hidden crush buried in the shadows, failing to even find a voice before it was crushed. It doesn't matter how much you love him now, it's futile. Xiao Yu already flew abroad to reunite with his real parents. He's never coming back. Not ever. Xiao Yu found his biological parents. Why wasn't I told about this? Why was something so monumental kept from me? Tio, have you no shame? Look at what you've done to him. Su Wanru's face drained of all color, as the atrocities of the past month flashed before her eyes. To keep Song Jinian smiling and content, she had ripped down the prayer ribbons I hung for luck, abandoned me alone in the desolate mountain ravines, and even handed my only chance at recovery to Song Jinian, shattering my racing dreams and crippling me for life. Her complexion turned a deathly, ghostly white, her legs wobbling and losing their strength, until she nearly collapsed onto the floor. Her surroundings blurred into a distorted haze, leaving her with nothing but the sound of her frantic heartbeat and the echo of her own ragged, desperate gasps. I don't give a damn about your past feelings. You are officially married to Jinian now. You're about to become a mother wolf, so bury those delusions once and for all, and focus on building a life with your husband. Despite Su Wanro's scandalous flight from the altar, everyone, including both the Song and Su families, accepted Song Jinian as the Su family's legitimate son-in-law. Su Wanru struggled to form a protest, her lips trembling. But darkness suddenly swamped her vision, and she plummeted straight to the cold ground. When she finally clawed her way back to consciousness, she found Song Jinyan perched by her side, his face a ruined mask of tears and snot. The events of this disastrous day had dealt a catastrophic blow to his fragile ego. A wedding is meant to be a man's crowning moment, yet his bride had abandoned him for another in front of everyone. How could he ever show his face in society again? Compounding the humiliation of his public fainting spells, Su Wanru's pregnancy had been exposed to the world. The doctor had just delivered the grim news, because of the immense emotional trauma she endured. The survival of the unborn child was now in jeopardy. At that thought, his wails grew even more pathetic and hollow. Deep down, his resentment toward me only intensified. Since childhood, he could never measure up to me in anything. Though the Song and Su families held similar social standing, his parents were obsessed with the Su family's wealth, forcing him to shamelessly suck up to me just to scavenge whatever scraps fell from the Su family table. Meanwhile, the Song inheritance was strictly reserved for his brother. He was left with absolutely nothing. Even his choice of a bride had to be someone who could serve as a stepping stone for his brother's bright future. Initially, the candidate his parents handpicked was a volatile, divorced female tycoon with a temper. It took every desperate tantrum and suicide threat in his arsenal to finally make his parents abandon that nightmare, to ensure they never tried such a stunt again. He knew he had to secure his own future by any means. Just then, I foolishly confided in him about my secret feelings for Su Wanru, even knowing I was merely the Su family's adopted ward. To the outside world, such a scandal seemed perfectly plausible. So he immediately turned around and snitched to Su Wanru. His original goal was just to crush my social climbing delusions, but he never expected what happened next, to utterly destroy my feelings for her. Su Wanru actually asked him to play the role of her boyfriend. Naturally, he lunged at this golden opportunity. After all, compared to the woman his parents had tried to force upon him, Su Wanru was a godsend in both beauty and status. By putting on a pathetic show and shedding fake tears, while pretending to have her best interests at heart, he easily manipulated Su Wanru into falling for his trap. One scheme after another, and they finally reached the altar. But then Su Wanru ditched her own wedding because of me, an ultimate humiliation that left him burning with rage. His parents berated him for being too incompetent to keep her yet in front of the Su family. They put on a mask of sorrowful victims, milking the Sus for every ounce of guilt they could get. In the past, Su Wanru would have pulled him into her arms to soothe him. Now she just stared hollowly at the ceiling, lost in thought. This cold indifference drove Song Jinyan to the brink of fury. He knew their relationship started only because Su Wanru wanted to use him to spite me, hoping I would finally give up on her and stay far away for good. But even now, after he had given her everything, and they were legally wed, she was still obsessed with me. Su Wanru fixed him with an icy piercing glare. His face turned ghostly pale as he tried to speak, but Su Wanru simply shifted her gaze to her abdomen. The doctor had just delivered the shocking news. She was already 1 month into her pregnancy, but she had meticulously used protection every single time. Except for that night, we tumbled down the mountain ravine, when she was too busy comforting Song Jinyan to care. Just that one lapse in judgment. If I hadn't already vanished from her life, perhaps bringing this child into the world would be okay. But now that I'm gone for good, there's absolutely no reason for this child to exist, whether it was Song Jinyan or this unborn baby. They were merely tools Su Wanru used to crush my heart. Moreover, now that she was certain of her feelings for me, she couldn't possibly keep this burden. I'm getting an abortion. Those 4 brutal words made Song Jinyan bolt upright. But before he could utter a single protest, my foster parents, the Sus, burst into the room. Father Su unleashed a torrent of rage upon Su Wanru until she shut her eyes and spiraled into unconsciousness. On the other side of the world, after my biological parents' people escorted me to America, I immediately spotted them waiting at the arrival gate, clutching bouquets and peering anxiously through the crowd. My features were a mirror image of my mother's. Our reunion after 15 long agonizing years brought the 3 of us together in a crushing embrace, sobbing uncontrollably as the years of pain washed away. Mother tried to wipe away her own tears while staring at me, only for a fresh wave to spill over. Once we reached home, she gripped my hand with a death's clutch, refusing to let go for even a second. My sweet boy Okal, the name your father and I gave you was Xing Chen. It's okay, Mom. Just call me Xing Chen from now on. After all, I had severed all ties with the Su family legacy. I was no longer a puppet of the Sus. Naturally, I would take the surname of my true bloodline. Mother nodded with overwhelming emotion, her gaze suddenly dropping to my crippled legs. Xing Chen, do you still dream of racing here in America, T? Because if you do, I'll contact the top professional clubs this instant. I froze, my body turning rigid as stone, as I stared down at my ruined, broken legs. My eyes suddenly burned with a searing redness, and one by one, heavy teardrops began to fall. Seeing me suddenly burst into tears, mother panicked instantly, fearing she had reopened a devastating wound. She pulled me into a tight embrace, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry, Mite. Xingchen, if you don't want to go back to the track, then we won't, okay? We'll forget all about it. Mom, it's not that I don't want to race anymore. I finally confessed everything, how Song Jinian shoved me from that height, how Su Wanrao gave my life-saving medicine to him instead. No, I let every bitter detail spill out. When I reached the part where the doctor declared that I'd never get behind the wheel again for the rest of my life, I collapsed into my mother's arms, sobbing hysterically. Even though so much time had passed, the moment I spoke the words out loud, the soul-crushing reality became impossible to bear. Mother was seething with rage, yet consumed by heartache. She spent a long time soothing my shattered spirit, waiting until I drifted into a deep sleep before quietly slipping away. She immediately placed a call back to our home country. Old Meng Mi, I need you to handle something for me. Ever since Su Wanru's pregnancy was confirmed, Song Jinian had officially moved into the Su manor. He catered to Su Wanru's every whim with terrifying precision, granting her every wish and providing whatever she desired. Not a single dish in her 3 daily meals was ever repeated. Under the meticulous devotion of the Sus and Song Jinian, Su Wanru's gaunt face finally began to regain its healthy glow. The only thorn in Song Jinian's side was the paperwork. Though he and Su Wanru had stood at the altars, they had yet to officially register their marriage. Legally speaking, they weren't husband and wife at all. Today was Mother Su's birthday celebration. No matter how much Su Wanro wanted to avoid home, she had to return. But instead of a festive party, she arrived to a chilling scene. Everyone was huddled together, whispering and pointing in judgment. A wave of panic surged through her heart, and she frantically pushed through the crowd to the center. There she saw Mother Su desperately shielding Song Jinian, trying to prevent the police from dragging him away in cuffs. Only after questioning the onlookers did she learn the truth. My fall from that high platform was Song Jinian's deliberate act of malice. During every single one of my training sessions, I always kept a camera running to document my performance, using the footage later to review and refine my technique. Right before the heated confrontation with Song Jinian that day, I had intended to go over and switch the recording off. I never expected him to hurl me over the edge first, capturing the entire violent crime on camera. Even if that footage hadn't existed, at the time scores of people witnessed the incident with their own eyes. Initially, my close friends intended to report the crime scenes, but due to Su Wanro's overwhelming influence and status, the club's top brass suppressed their voices, forbidding anyone from involving the police. That was until today, when a single overseas call placed from America forced this dark secret back into the light. At the exact same time, the scandal of Su Wanro giving the miracle drug to Song Jinian was ruthlessly exposed to the public. This avalanche of damning revelations utterly trashed the Su family's once prestigious reputation. The lead officer on the scene was nursing a massive headache. Right at that moment, the piercing blast of a siren erupted from behind the crowd. Everyone whipped their heads around in unison, watching as a stern, formidable, middle-aged man stepped out, walking with purpose directly toward Su Wanru. He flashed a high-level warrant and barked, "Su Wanru, you are under suspicion for criminal entrapment and malice. You're coming with us right now," without waiting for her consent or a single protest. He gestured sharply to the tactical team behind him. A group of officers swarmed her instantly, shoving her into the back of a black vehicle. Seeing her daughter seized, Mother Su shrieked and tried to interfere, but Father Su snapped back to his senses and grabbed her, holding her back by force. This man's authority dwarfed his own by leagues. Their family was completely powerless against him. The local police no longer showed any hesitation to hauling Song Jinian up and tossing him into a patrol car. The crowd slowly thinned and drifted away, leaving behind nothing but a scene of absolute ruin. Mother Su's strength failed her as she collapsed onto the pavement. Father Su desperately reached out to pull her up, but the world went black for her, and she spiraled into a total blackout. Inside the grim, dimly lit interrogation room, the official sat directly across from a trembling Su Wanru, holding a document in his hands, as he methodically listed every one of her transgressions. The more she listened, the more familiar the details became. She realized these were all the cruelties she had inflicted on me. She had once questioned her mother about my real parents' identity, but they had always avoided the topic with visible terror. When the man mentioned the fact that she had surrendered the miracle drug to Song Jinian, crippling the ambassador's son Xiao Yu so that he could never again step back into a racing car, she finally realized that the ambassador's long-lost son was me. She surged forward, desperate to stand up, needing to confirm this earth-shattering reality from the man before her. But the guards behind her pinned her down with brutal force. The official leveled a chilling, soul-piercing stare at her, before coldly pronouncing her ultimate judgment. In a separate room, Song Jinian's situation was even more dire than Su Wanru's. The deep dive investigation had unearthed a terrifying pattern. Song Jinian was a serial offender of intentional assault, though. Aside from targeting me, he had systematically dismantled the lives of several others, simply because he found them personally distasteful. The Song family possessed immense wealth and influence, and under normal circumstances could have shielded him, but the sheer volume of his crimes, and the fact that he provoked a titan he shouldn't have, forced them to cut their losses and abandon him entirely. The Songs eventually shelled out a fortune in hush money, just to make the other victims drop their charges. Furious and humiliated by the scandal, the Songs unleashed their unbridled rage on Song Jinian's soul, officially disowning him and severing all ties. They left him to rot in his own mess, until Mother Su finally intervened to bring him back to her estate. Mother Su used to be incredibly fond of Song Jinian, viewing him as the gentle, sensible young man who could finally make her icy daughter crack a smile. Every time he visited their home, the halls would echo with warmth and laughter. But now, having seen the monstrous list of his misdeeds, she couldn't even force a pleasant expression toward him. The mere sight of him induced a throbbing headache. Ultimately, she banished Song Jinian to a secondary property next door, assigning a few maids to keep a watchful eye on him. She strictly instructed the staff to keep him breathing, and nothing more. He was to be ignored in every other way, Just a short while ago, Song Jinian was the envy of the entire social circle. But in a single night, he was dragged through the dirt, rebranded as a villain in the mouth of every gossip. Now everyone avoided him like a plague-ridden pariah. He threw tantrums and wallowed in bitter resentment, but the maid sent by Mother Su didn't give a damn about his pathetic outbursts. I'd suggest you give up on those delusions right now. If it weren't for the heir currently in the young mistress's womb, the Su family wouldn't lift a single finger to help you. Song Jinian's mind immediately raced to Esu, Wanru's unborn child, and he finally forced himself to calm down. After all, since he had been stripped of everything, this baby was his final tether to power. He had to ensure that everything went smoothly, until Su Wanro successfully birthed the child. With that cold calculation in mind, he ceased his pathetic struggling, and quietly finished the remains of the bland porridge. Meanwhile, in the room downstairs, ever since Su Wanro had been demoted, with no hope of returning to her team date, she had become a hollow shell slumped on the floor. Her legs were sprawled out aimlessly, and her hands hung lifelessly at her sides. Those eyes, once sharp and radiant, had lost all luster, turning dull and clouded with despair. The maid lugged a massive crate into the room and set it down heavily before Su Wanru. These items were returned from the recycling center, They said these were things the young master discarded, yes. But because the contents were far too precious, they didn't dare dispose of them haphazardly, So they sent everything back exactly as it was found. Upon hearing that these were my discarded belongings in Su Wanru's vacant eyes suddenly flickered with a desperate light. After my departure, every single trace of me had been purged from my room days, including the family portraits we once cherished. She had scoured every corner of the estate, failing to find even a shred of evidence that I existed. Su Wanru lunged at the crate and yanked it toward her. Perhaps because she hadn't moved in so long, her clumsy strength was poorly aimed, causing the cardboard to tear violently open. The contents spilled across the floor in a chaotic mess. As she realized what lay scattered before her, her eyes widened in absolute shock. The pile was filled with every gift she had ever given me. The teddy bear she clutched was from my first day at the manor, her very first welcome gift to her new brother. Back then, I was paralyzed by fear, unable to sleep for days on end, until Su Wanru would sneak into my room at night, using that bear to whisper bedtime stories to me. She had told me the bear was her proxy, swearing it would protect me whenever she couldn't. And those leather shoes nearby. The dress shoes nearby were the very first birthday gift she gave me, specially commissioned from abroad just for me. The remaining boxes scattered across the floor contained the treasures from every single birthday she had celebrated with me over the years. Every year, as the clock struck midnight and signaled my birth, she would place a meticulously prepared gift right outside my bedroom door. She never missed a single year, not once, until that fateful day I turned 18. Once she unearthed my diary and the forbidden secrets within it, she never presented me with another gift again. Su Wanru scanned each item one by one, the agonizing pain in her eyes deepening with every glance. I had preserved these tokens of affection with obsessive care. If it weren't for the slight yellowing of the vintage packaging, anyone would have mistaken them for brand new. Her hands trembled violently as she reached out, tracing the contours of these memories with her fingertips. Suddenly, her gaze caught onto something hidden deeper, and she unearthed a tattered diary from the bottom of the pile. Seeing the pages held together by layers of yellowed tape, she realized with a jolt that this was the very journal she had once shredded in a rage. The boy who had always affectionately called her sister, had suddenly started addressing her by her full name. At the time, she assumed it was just a sign of me maturing and harboring the typical secrets of a growing boy. So she hadn't given it a second thought. That is until Song Jinyan cornered her in private and exposed the depth of my forbidden feelings for her. Only then did she realize I had been in love with her all along. Her initial shock had instantly curdled into a cold, paralyzing fear. I had shared my most intimate vulnerabilities with Song Jinyan, a man who was notoriously incapable of keeping his mouth shut. If Song Jinyan ever decided to leak the scandalous truth, it wouldn't just destroy the two of us, it would bring the entire Su family empire to its knees. So, before the secret could blow up and go public, she resolved to crush my feelings while they were still flickering in the cradle. She couldn't recall the blur of storming into my room, nor the savage act of ripping my diary to pieces. By the time she snapped back to her senses, she was staring into my shattered, tear-stained face. In that heartbeat, she felt a surge of genuine panic. But the scandalous content of those pages turned that fear into fury. From the very second you stepped foot into this house, Yash, I have never viewed you as anything more than a brother. Why? How could you harbor such disgusting, twisted feelings for me? If you have any desire to remain under the Su roof, then kill these pathetic feelings this instant. Otherwise, if this scandal leaks and the city finds out, you'll drag the Su family name through the absolute dirt. Her trembling fingers traced the spine of the mangled diary. She could vividly picture the scene after she had stormed out. How I must have collapsed sobbing until my spirit broke. Only to spend the night exhausted and drained, painstakingly taping every shredded fragment back together. The agony was so raw that it was physically etched onto the pages. The paper was warped and wrinkled, where my tears had once soaked through. The salt and moisture had blurred the ink into dark stains, rendering many of the words illegible. Yet the intensity was still palpable, the sheer overwhelming weight of the love I once held for her. That was why I remained so stubbornly persistent afterward, desperately trying to salvage our bond time and time again. But she couldn't allow herself to waver. The inevitable fury of our foster parents alone would have only caused me more devastating pain. To completely sever my attachment to her once and for all, she decided to stage a cruel charade with a fake lover. Upon learning of her desperate plan, Song Jinyan had eagerly volunteered for the role. At the time, she looked at his frail, trembling form and felt a misguided flicker of genuine pity. Only now did she realize the horrific truth. Every single move had been a part of Song Jinyan's master plan. From there, the dominoes fell exactly as he intended. As she and Song Jinyan grew closer in the public eye and the spark of devotion in my eyes grew dimmer and colder. When she first stayed out all night for Song Jinyan's sake, and when she held his hand to announce their engagement, followed by their official wedding date, the last trace of love in my gaze finally vanished, leaving behind nothing but a chilling, distant void. That hollow indifference was the only thing left of the feelings I once harbored for her. Back then, she had felt such an immense sense of relief, celebrating the fact that I had finally stopped loving her. But now that she's finally awakened to her own late-blooming love, the realization was nothing but pure unadulterated torture. A suffocating sorrow permeated every corner of the room. As she clutched the diary to her chest and wailed in agony. Jincheng Airport, half a year has passed. I've set foot on this soil once again. When I left for America, I was certain I would never cross this border again. Yet, in just 6 months, destiny has brought me back. This time I've returned as my mother's representative to attend her mentor's grand birthday banquet. Since her demanding career kept her tied to the States, she entrusted this important task to me, to ensure my absolute safety and peace of mind. She even insisted my cousin accompany me on this trip, despite only being away for a short 6 months. Staring at the familiar skyline and the bustling streets, I felt as though an entire lifetime had passed. Beside me, Xia Jicheng couldn't stop marveling at the sights. Having been raised in America since he was a child, this was his very first time touching down on home soil. Before we even boarded our flight, my mother had already reached out to another close associate back home, imploring him to look after us with the utmost care. So upon landing, we bypassed the local hotels entirely, and were whisked away directly to the Gu family estate. The Gu Manor sat in the prestigious Southern District, an elite enclave where the city's most powerful families resided. And the Gu family, where my mother's mentor lived, was situated just a stone's throw from my former home. Gazing at the intimately familiar streetscapes, I lost myself in a daze for a fleeting moment. I had traversed this specific road countless times. At age 6, the day the Su family officially took me in, this was the very path we traveled. At age 15, when training ran late into the night, and Su Wanru came to escort me back. We drove along this same stretch of asphalt. On the day of Su Wanru's wedding, I watched her bridal car disappear down this very road. Finally dragging my heavy suitcase behind me, I followed this path one last time toward the airport. As I was drowning in these bittersweet memories, a large hand suddenly appeared in my field of vision, waving dismissively to snap me out of it. Only then did I blink back into reality. Why the long face? You look totally spaced out. It's nothing, just thinking. The car pulled smoothly into the Gu family's sprawling courtyard. The moment our feet hit the pavement, the host greeted us with overwhelming warmth. We quickly presented the meticulously selected gifts and handed them over to the waiting attendants. After a round of polite pleasantries and greetings, they personally led us to our prearranged suites. Both of our rooms were located on the ground floor, where sliding glass doors revealed a stunning garden view. Once we finished unpacking our belongings, we spent a bit more time chatting with Mother Gui before picking up our carefully chosen gifts and setting off on foot to visit my mother's mentor. Before heading out, we made sure to tell Mother Gui not to bother saving any dinner for us. She nodded understandingly, warning us to stay vigilant and safe. As she watched us disappear down the driveway, the walk from the Gu estate to the Fangs wasn't long, but Xia Jiacheng is the type who can't stand silence, constantly pestering me for legendary stories about the capital. Even though I had called this city home for 15 years, my life had been a rigid cycle between the club and the Su mansion, rarely venturing anywhere else. After Su Wanru discovered my hidden feelings, I became even more of a recluse, hardly leaving my room except for trips to that mountain temple. The moment he heard there was a temple worth seeing, Jiacheng begged me to take him there to offer some prayers. Since he was a kid, Jiacheng has been a restless wanderer. Back in the States, my aunt could at least keep him in check, but here he was, like a wild monkey let loose from its cage. I eventually succumbed to his relentless whining and gave him a reluctant nod of agreement. Once we finished celebrating Grandpa Feng's birthday, I'll take you there, Jiacheng finally released my arm, grinning with total satisfaction. By the time we arrived at the Feng residence, the staff was already buzzing with frantic energy, prepping every detail for the grand milestone celebration. The butler spotted us approaching and enthusiastically ushered us into the manor. In the center of the living room, I immediately locked eyes with the legendary Old Man Feng resting on the sofa. I placed our meticulously wrapped tributes onto the mahogany coffee table. Grandpa Feng, on behalf of my parents, I wish you eternal vitality and a life that spans 3,000 years of glory. Jiacheng and I also wish you the strength of a 1,000-year pine as you stride through the coming seasons. Hearing such a poetic string of blessings, the old man let out a hearty, booming laugh. He patted the armrest of the chair beside him and motioned for us to join him on the sofa, asking warmly, "How are your parents faring lately?" "They're doing exceptionally well," I replied. "It's only due to their demanding careers that they couldn't fly back to celebrate your special day." "Think nothing of it. Their presence is felt in spirit. As for you, take them out for a spin around the city, Paul, and make sure you're back in time for dinner. You youngsters need to get out and experience the world. I'm far too old to be trekking around now." We conversed a while longer before bidding the old man farewell, and following Feng Jiu out of the manor. The three of us hit it off immediately, chatting animatedly, until we reached a high point in the conversation, where Feng Jiu suddenly slapped his forehead in realization. I almost completely spaced on this plus. It just so happens that I booked a session at a racing club weeks ago, just to learn the ropes for fun. I recall Xingchen used to be a pro racer, right? Nay. Why don't you come vet this club for me and see if it's legit? If they're mid, I'll just find somewhere else. The moment the words left his mouth, our faces paled in shock. Whoa, what's with the sudden heavy vibe? I don't think we can make it, man. My brother, well, for personal reasons, he's totally done with the racetrack. Say no more, we'll skip it. You guys are the guests here, and I'm making sure you leave with nothing but good vibes. After saying that, he signaled the butler to cancel the session with the club, then pivoted to lead us toward a scenic park nearby. Inside the struggling racing club, Song Jinian was overseeing a driver's simulator session. Ever since his malicious assault scandal blew up, the entire club had been dragged through the mud. Members were jumping ship to rival clubs left and right, with their reputation totally trashed. The elite high rollers were nowhere to be found. In a desperate move, the head coach pulled every string he had to court a few wealthy investors who were still willing to gamble on them. Just as the crew was training with intense heat, the coach stormed in with a dark, thunderous expression. He clapped his hands sharply. "Stop the grind, Everyone, pack your bags and go home." Stunned by the coach's sudden outburst of temper, the team exchanged bewildered glances. Even Song Jinian, who had been lounging in his chair, stood up in confusion. He slowly approached the fuming coach. "What's the deal? Why are we cutting practice short, miss and more?" "How should I know, Wal? The Feng family just sent word that they aren't coming. It looks like they've officially killed the investment deal," as those words hung in the air, like a single drop of water hitting boiling oil. The crowd instantly erupted into a chaotic frenzy of whispers. Some, overcome with desperation, even began to break down in tears. They were banking on this funding to sustain their training and fuel their competitions. Amidst the rising tide of wails, Song Jingnian's face grew increasingly deathly pale. Clenching his fists until his palms bled, he demanded, "Why? How the hell should I know, Makia?" Song Jingnian had no memory of how he finally stumbled away. The scorching afternoon sun seared his eyes with agonizing heat, yet he seemed completely numb to the physical pain, as he returned home like a hollowed-out ghost, colliding head-on with Su Wanru just as she was rushing out. Subconsciously, he blurted out, "Where are you going? None of your business, my young." Su Wanru didn't give him even a shred of her attention. She was hell-bent on making her grand exit. Moments ago, Mother Su had received a prestigious invitation from the Feng family for the old master's milestone birthday gala. Normally, an opportunity like this wouldn't fall into her lap, but she'd eavesdropped on Mother Su mentioning that Ambassador Zia's son would also be in attendance. After the bombshells dropped the other day, everyone was well aware that Ambassador Zia's son was me. The mere thought of finally coming face to face with me again made her abandon all logic and restraint. She planned to sneak into the Feng estate to test her luck, desperate to catch even a glimpse of my shadow. "What do you mean it's none of my business?" "What? I am your husband. We never signed the papers, and that wedding was never finished." "You are not my husband." With those biting words, she brushed past him and vanished. Song Jingnian gritted his teeth and began to shadow her stealthily. He knew her frantic haste meant she was racing to find me at any cost. Feng Ju had been showing me and Xia Jiaqing around for ages, and our group was finally heading back fully satisfied. But the moment we reached the main entrance, I spotted that all too familiar silhouette. From the very second I gave up on Su Wanrao for good, I vowed never to lay eyes on her pathetic face again. Instinctively, I moved to take a different path, but Su Wanru caught sight of me instantly. "Xiao Yu," I let out a heavy, weary sigh. As expected, there was no escaping this confrontation. I turned my head and fixed a frigid, icy stare on her. Su Wanru lunged forward instinctively, trying to throw her arms around me, only to be stopped dead in her tracks by the two towering protective men flanking me. In the past, normally Su Wanru would have told them to get lost, but now her status didn't even grant her that right. Moreover, between these two imposing men, one was the grandson of the legendary old man Feng. He was someone she simply couldn't afford to provoke. "What business do you have with my brother Kie?" Regarding the atrocities Su Wanru had committed against me, he had already heard the sordid details. Before they even touched down in the country, my mother had repeatedly warned him to keep a sharp eye out for anyone from the Su family, especially Su Wanru and that snake Song Jinian. Su Wanru froze, caught off guard by the question. She stammered, her lips trembling, struggling to find the right words to say. Should she admit she only realized her feelings after I left? That she was now desperate to win me back, As for Song Jinian, she could easily discard him like trash. After all, they never officially signed those papers. She swallowed hard, her throat tight with nerves, staring past them at me standing in the back. After only 6 months of being away, I looked far better than I ever did while rotting at the Su house. Those eyes that were once perpetually dimmed by sorrow were now overflowing with a vibrant, piercing light. "Xiao Yu, I know I messed up. I was wrong. I never should have treated you with such cruelty. I deluded myself into thinking I didn't love you, but your absence forced me to face the truth. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. As for Song Jinian, he was nothing but a pawn used to spite you. So please, can you find it in you to give me one more chance, Umio?" She looked like a wife seeking atonement after years of betrayal, begging for her husband's mercy and forgiveness. Unfortunately, I am not some pathetic shadow who crawls back the moment a toxic woman sheds a tear. As I listened to her desperate excuses, my heart felt nothing but a cold, biting irony. "But didn't you say you only ever saw me as a brother?" "What? You told me my feelings for you were a disgusting mistake. You said our love would bring nothing but shame to the sus. You used Song Jinian to break me and drive me away, Koto. And I finally granted you that wish, didn't I, boss? You are the architect of this entire disaster, Boko. Yet now you're the one begging for a rewrite? Su Wanro, do you really think the world revolves around your whims like that?" Each sentence I threw at her was a targeted strike, causing Su Wanro's fingertips to tremble violently. Back then, she was so obsessed with severing my devotion to her that she ruthlessly weaponized those cruel, hateful words. I truly believed that I had finally moved past the scars of the past, but standing before Su Wanro once again, hearing the hollow memories in her voice, those buried traumas and long-lost agonies, suddenly surged back, tearing through my heart. "Su Wanru, you have the nerve to beg for another chance, Wolik. But tell me, why didn't you give me a single chance of hope? When our car flipped and we spiraled into that ravine, when I was desperately pleading for the emergency medicine, just so I could save my legs and my future toy, why did you refuse to give me a chance then? Why did you strip away my only shred of hope? As I reached the end of my rope, my body swayed, nearly collapsing, while hot tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. My gaze was a storm of raw resentment and pure hatred. We had known each other for 15 long years. She knew better than anyone that these legs were as vital to me as my very life, and yet she still ordered the doctors to hand the life-saving medicine to Song Jinian, who didn't even remotely need it. For countless nights after that, I was haunted by nightmares. Beside me, Xia Jiaqing listened to my agonizing outburst and supported me, his heart breaking for my pain. I shook my head and continued to lash out at Su Wanru. I've done a lot of soul-searching since I left for America. I admit I was young, reckless, and incredibly naive, but so blinded by my love for you that it consumed me, causing me to ignore the gravity of the consequences. I understood your anger and even your resentment, but aside from loving you in the shadows, what? I never did anything to hurt you, Shuayi. So why did you hate me enough to ensure I'd never sit behind a racing wheel again, Kiel? You claimed you would take care of me forever, moi. But do you honestly think those words hold any weight now, meh? Su Wanru fought desperately to steady her erratic breathing, but my words sliced through her like a serrated blade, mercilessly shredding whatever was left of her heart. She was paralyzed, unable to find a single excuse. Back then, she was utterly oblivious to her own feelings. She only cared about making me give up on her for good, which is why she let those venomous lies fly. And at that moment, she was on the verge of marrying Song Jinian, completely blind to his true twisted nature. She assumed that even if I was confined to the house, her wealth would be more than enough to provide for me. She even deluded herself into thinking Jinian wouldn't mind. But now the entire deck has been reshuffled. She doesn't even have the audacity to utter such nonsense. I tilted my head and peered past her shoulder, spotting a figure cowering and lurking in the shadows. It was obviously Song Jinian, pathetic as ever. Remembering he was the real monster who crippled me, a chilling, mocking smile spread across my face. I raised my voice. Why are you hiding back there like a rat, yo? Su Wanru whipped around to look, and her expression instantly turned thunderous. Song Jinian actually had the nerve to stalk her. Get back to the house now, Sol. Song Jinian was already seething after hearing her profess her undying love for me, now being barked at like a stray dog. He dropped the act and stopped hiding. He stood up and marched toward us with a scowl. He reached out, trying to grab Su Wanru's hand, but she dodged his touch with lightning speed. He gritted his teeth and redirected his glare at me, scanning me from head to toe with pure malice. Finally, his eyes locked onto my legs as he sneered. So this is it, huh, Tia? Our club was seconds away from securing the Feng family's backing. Practice was going perfectly, everything was on track. Then the coach storms in, saying the deal is dead. After some digging, the truth came out. Just because your racing career is over, well, you couldn't stand to see the club thrive without you. You manipulated the Fengs into pulling their sponsorship, bah? Xiao Yu Biao? You really are as pathetically selfish as always, aren't you, Saul? Shut your mouth. Is this how the sus raised you? Well, what kind of drivel are you spewing? Su Wanru didn't care about his physical state anymore. She lunged forward and delivered a stinging slap. The force of the blow sent Jinian spiraling to the ground. His cheek flared up into a vivid angry red. If you can't speak like a human, then don't speak at all, Chal. No one would mistake you for a mute, yes. Su Wanru instinctively moved to chase after me, but Song Jinian suddenly lunged and shoved her to the dirt. Wanru, I am your husband. What? How can you crawl back to another man right in front of me now? Su Wanru sprawled onto the ground in a heap. The blood from her womb stained the cold floor. And only then did Song Jinian remember she was pregnant. In a frantic panic, he scrambled to call an ambulance, to rush Su Wanru to the emergency room. Mother Su arrived at the hospital livid after hearing the news. She delivered a thunderous slap across Song Jinian's face, abandoning all her usual grace and composure, to hurl profanities for the first time in her life. What possessed you to go out and stir up such trouble, Walt? Mother Su had been resting peacefully at home, until the butler came sprinting inside, shouting that Su Wanru had been hospitalized. Terrified for her daughter and her unborn grandson, she had rushed to the hospital immediately, only to run into the Feng family's staff at the entrance, revealing the absolute idiocy Song Jinian had displayed. I am no longer the lowly foster son of the Su family, but the son of a high-ranking diplomat. With the Su family's prestige currently in freefall, they simply cannot afford to offend me. Moreover, while Song Jinian was hurling his insults, Old Man Feng's grandson was standing right there. The officer previously ordered to arrest Su Wanru happened to be Feng Jiu's eldest uncle. After confirming that I was unharmed, Mother Su swung her hand and slapped Jinian again. Then she turned and struck Su Wanru as well. Look at your status now, Mao. And look at who Xiao Yu has become. How dare you still have the nerve to seek him out? Su Wanru, after all the atrocities you committed, Shol, do you honestly believe he will ever forgive you? Mom, I know exactly what I need to do. You are going to be the absolute death of me. Her response provided Mother Su no relief. Instead, it made her clutch her chest in agony. With a final glare, Mother Sue turned her back on them and stormed out of the hospital room. Bury those delusional thoughts once and for all. The child is gone. Don't let there be a next time. To Su Wanro, this miscarriage was a twisted blessing home. She was now free from any burdens or lingering ties, ready to pursue me without any more distractions. Witnessing Su Wanro's darkening expression, Song Jinian could only grit his teeth in silent fury. On the day of Old Man Feng's grand birthday gala, the venue was packed with distinguished guests. After presenting our gifts, I stood aside with Xia Jia Cheng, whispering about our upcoming trip to the temple. It gets quite chilly up in those mountains, Wool. You'd better remember to layer up, Tio. Also, the mountain only serves vegetarian fare, Diko. So just pack some water and biscuits. Suddenly, I sensed a looming shadow before me. As I lifted my gaze, I saw Su Wanru standing directly in our path. What on earth are you doing here? Are you guys heading to the mountain temple? Well, I never pegged you for the type who enjoys eavesdropping. I couldn't be bothered to entertain her, pulling Xia Jiacheng along as I walked away. Su Wanru tried to pursue us, but a crowd of guests swarmed her instead. Throughout the entire banquet, she never managed to get another word in with me. At the mountain temple outside the city, the sky was beginning to pale with the dawn. The mist grew increasingly thick and heavy. Massive plumes of white vapor swirled upward, completely blanketing the winding path ahead. Xia Jiacheng and I ascended the stone steps, slowly trekking toward the sanctuary at the summit. The ethereal chanting of monks drifted from afar, echoing alongside the deep, distant tolling of bells. Ancient towering trees dominated the courtyard, with emerald moss creeping over the stone slabs. The wind rustled through the leaves with a crisp sound, vibrating the bronze bells hanging from the eaves. Taking a deep, refreshing breath, I sat down on a weathered stone bench in the corner, watching Xia Jiacheng act like a curious child and peering at every nook and cranny with wide eyes. It should have been a moment of absolute peace, yet it was shattered by Su Wanro's arrival. She's like a relentless ghost. That was the visceral thought that flashed through my mind the moment I saw her marching toward me. Xiao Yu, can we please just have a real talk? Initially, I had zero intention of humoring her, but then I remembered my impending return to America. What if she stays obsessed and follows me across the ocean? It's better to use this chance to end things once and for all. So instead of walking away, I settled back into my seat. Fine then. What's on your mind, Guo? A flicker of desperate hope ignited in Su Wanru's eyes as she moved to sit right beside me. But I stood up instantly and walked toward the clearing, only stopping beneath the shade of a Bodhi tree, turning to face the Su Wanru who trailed behind. I snapped, "Make it quick, I'm on a schedule. Speak your mind and make it quick." Su Wanru took a jagged deep breath, unloading every word she had bottled up over the last 6 months. She claimed she never had real feelings for Song Jinian, insisting their relationship was just a charade to make me give up. She even went as far as to say that she was completely oblivious to Jinian's plot to harm Mikya, which is why she chose to save him first during the accident. After all, at that time, Song Jinian was officially her fiancé. She argued that their marriage was never legally binding, and that the child they lost was nothing but a mistake. A grandson her mother had desperately pressured her for. Now that she had miscarried, she promised to kick Song Jinian to the curb immediately. In short, yes, she was pathetically begging for me to turn back, so that we could return to the way things were, for the very first time. I truly scrutinized the woman standing before me. She appeared exactly the same as she always had. Yet for some reason, she felt like a total stranger. Su Wanru, regardless of your motives for being with him, the reality is that you caused me genuine, irreversible pain. The truth is, Jinian never would have had the spine to hurt me. If he hadn't been emboldened by your constant indulgence, you were the one who first shunned me, neglected me, and broke my spirit. He only learned to target me because he followed your lead. Well, to be honest, the two of you are actually a perfect match. Su Wanru's face drained of all color, completely blindsided, that I would ever describe her and Jinian as a perfect match. In her mind, she loathed the very idea of him, especially after his true ugly colors had been exposed. Her disgust for him had reached a breaking point. I didn't even bother to look at her as I continued. You were the one who pushed me away first. You forced me to kill my feelings for you. I used to genuinely deeply love you too, simply because after I arrived at the Su household, you were the first person who ever showed me kindness. You occupied the entirety of my youth, which is why my heart belonged to you for so long. But once you cast me aside, I stepped out into the world and finally realized that you weren't my everything. You and Song Jinian did so many repulsive things, and now you think a simple reset can erase all that filth which us. Her attempts to gloss over the past were beyond insulting, hoping that I'll just crawl back to you. That's a total pipe dream. My racing career is dead because of the two of you. As long as I still feel the phantom pain in my legs, I will never ever find it in me to forgive you. Honestly, Suwanro, you're incredibly self-centered. You act like you're doing everything for the greater good, but in reality, it's always been about your own ego. You turned a charade into reality with Song Jinian just to spite me, nah. And now, you claim you never loved him just to lure me back. Beetle, in your twisted little world, we're all just convenient tools to be discarded. You're the one who promised I was your top priority, but swearing you'd never hurt me, Suwanro, you were the first to break your oath. So what makes you think I'd ever look back, like? One devastating truth after another forced her to slowly close her eyes in shame. The words she wanted to say felt like lead in her throat. A bitter, soul-crushing regret filled her senses, as she suddenly flashed back to a night long ago. A night when I was too terrified to sleep. She sat by my bed clutching that teddy bear, whispering soft bedtime stories to soothe me. At the very end of the tale, she tucked the bear beside my pillow, and made a solemn, unwavering vow. Sister will protect you forever, just like this bear. I promise I will never ever hurt you. You will always be my number one choice. You're just humoring me, aren't you, sis? No way, let's pinky swear on it. Fine, but if you ever really do hurt me, I'll never speak to you again for the rest of my life. Tears began to fall silently from the corners of her eyes. Suwanru opened them once more to look at me, but I was already walking down the mountain without a glance. Xiao Yu. I paused for a split second, but didn't turn around. Is there really no hope for us? Is it truly over? I vanished from her sight without providing a single answer. Su Wanru finally collapsed, buried her face, and wailed, nearby in the shadows. Song Jinian's eyes were no longer filled with spite or envy, but only with an overwhelming hollow despair. He had once done the most vile things to climb the Su family ladder, burning every bridge and committing every sin imaginable. He had even betrayed me, the only person who was ever kind to him. After finally becoming the golden son-in-law, everyone envied. He realized the woman he had given his heart to had long ago surrendered her heart to someone else. His gaze was a hollow void of confusion and helplessness. After eavesdropping on our brutal exchange, the crushing truth finally dawned on him. Suwanru didn't truly love anyone. She was only ever obsessed with herself. His 4 years of calculated devotion were now a total farce. Nothing more than scattered ash, drifting aimlessly away in the wind. He knew that if he had a shred of dignity left, he would cut ties and flee from Suwanro immediately, and leave the Su household behind forever. But with the Songs having officially disowned him, and both Su parents viewing him with utter loathing, his only desperate move left was to cling to this woman like a drowning man. He buried his despair deep inside, looking at Su Wanru with pleading, pathetic eyes. As he reached out to grasp her hand, Wanru, you still have me. Can't we just try to make this work, please? But Su Wanru mirrored my coldness perfectly. Without even a passing glance, she turned and walked away. The final ember of hope in his chest was extinguished. He knew then that it was truly irrevocably over. I waited at the airport gate for what felt like an eternity, before Xia Jiacheng finally appeared, panting and frantic. Where on earth have you been, ha? Why the hell are you so late, Mo? I just caught the most legendary circus act at the hospital. What kind of circus, puh? Song Jinian's love curdled into absolute hatred. He shoved Su Wanru down the mountain path, leaving her body riddled with multiple fractures. Since help arrived too late, she had to have both legs amputated. As for Jinian, he lost his footing and took a nasty tumble. Now his legs are completely useless too. Mother Su passed out from the sheer shock of the news. Father Su has already ordered the butler that the second they're discharged, they are to be tossed out into the streets, to fend for themselves or rot in the gutter. But the best part, before they even left the hospital, they started clawing at each other again, tumbled headfirst down a flight of stairs, and both ended up in a permanent vegetative state. Satisfied. What does their karma have to do with me, Tio? The flight is boarding. I'm going to get some sleep. I didn't give it another thought. I simply closed my eyes. The aircraft sliced through the vast horizon, vanishing into the deep layers of the clouds.